what exactly is the United States proposing now? I'm joined by U.S. Senator John McCain, who's been a fierce critic of the Obama administration's response, saying the U.S. is not doing nearly enough to support the Syrian opposition. Senator McCain, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Christiane.
So really trying to unpick what was announced yesterday, can you tell us what exactly is different now, and will it be enough?
I cannot tell you what will be significantly different. They say that there's going to be, as you quoted Mr. Rhodes, different kinds of assistance. I assume that that means some weapons if it's military assistance, but they're going to have to come over to Congress pretty soon and inform us as to exactly what their plans are. But in the meantime, I have the distinct impression, unfortunately, that it's not going to be enough, because in order to change the battlefield situation the way it is today, we're going to have to take out his air power, to establish a safe zone, and provide heavy weapons to the resistance. There's got to be anti-tank and anti-air weapons, and frankly, I've heard of no sign of that. Incremental increases, I think that time is past. And could I just mention one other thing, Christiane? It's not only the attacks from the air that are so important asset for Bashar Assad, but it's also the ability to move by air men and equipment from one place to another. For example, the battleground right now, as you know, is Aleppo. They're going to take the airfield and use that airfield to move the kind of equipment and men necessary to take Aleppo.
Mm-hmm. There seems to be a battle within the U.S. administration, because even yesterday, before Deputy National Security Advisor Ben Rhodes announced what they were doing, which, as you point out, is still a little unclear, there was a thought that maybe there was going to be a no-fly zone of some sort, some kind of buffer zone inside Syria next door to Jordan, that maybe there would be an arm and train program. Is there a sort of a struggle within different branches, the State Department against the White House or something? Is that where the confusion is?
I think that's a source of one area of confusion, because, as you know, over a year ago, all of the President's national security team had recommended supplying arms to the rebels, and that was overruled at the White House after the recommendation. Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, Director of National Intelligence, and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So I don't think there's any doubt there are divisions. Now, we are reading that those divisions are between Senator Kerry and new National Security Advisor Susan Rice and Secretary of Defense Hagel and Mr. Donilon. But look, those are all things that are in the media, but there's no doubt that, in my view, what is very curious is that the President of the United States himself didn't come out and say what the United States plans to do. I mean, if this is an escalation, I think the people of the United States deserve an explanation. And if he wants support, he's going to have to talk directly to the American people.
Now, you mentioned the American people, and there are obviously polls which show that the majority don't want another military adventure. However, that does change when you add the chemical weapons component. I want to ask you, because you were speaking with former President Clinton, and it's been much publicized, that he said to you that, polling was not, a way to make decisions on these kinds of issues. Can you give us a little bit of a flavor of what he said to you?
Well, I think what President Clinton was saying is something we all know, and this was his experience in Bosnia and Kosovo. As you recall, President Clinton, when he made the decision, and maybe it was a little later than some of us wanted, but the fact is, he spoke directly to the American people as to why it was necessary for us to stop the genocide after Srebrenica in Bosnia. And so I think what the President was saying is that these things are happening, and the President of the United States probably should do what he did back in the 90s when we had that situation as well. And I don't think the President was trying to be overly critical of the President. I think he was mainly saying what he would have done.
And now let me ask you, because there are reports even today coming from the White House, it's been reported that senior officials are saying that it would be much more difficult, much more costly to put up a no-fly zone in Syria than, for instance, they did in Libya, and that there was no long-term U.S. interest in, quote, an open-ended intervention that it would include a no-fly zone. What is your response to that?
How many times have you and I seen high-ranking officials, frankly, unfortunately, in uniform as well as out, that will tell you all the reasons why we can't effectively intervene? And the one question that needs to be asked is, what happens if we don't? It's becoming a regional conflict. Massacres are taking place. 93,000 people. Now Jordan is destabilized. Lebanon is obviously could evolve into sectarian violence we haven't seen since the 70s. This is, and what is the effect in the Middle East, Christian, should we ask ourselves, of a Bashar al-Assad victory on the perception of Iranian power and influence in the region? I mean, this has incredible implications. And I know that we have the military capability to impose a no-fly zone, to crater their runways and their fixed installations where fuel and parts are, and establish the no-fly zone with Patriot missiles. And we can do that. And if we can't do that, then the question ought to be asked to the to the Pentagon, what in the world are we wasting tens of billions of dollars on defense for if we can't even take care of this situation?
As always, great to get your insights, Senator McCain. Thank you for joining me from Capitol Hill.
Thank you.